Does this sound like your child? Nina struggles to process information, especially auditory information, and connect the dots. She has trouble remembering things she's learned from day to day. She uses language that is younger than her age. She has amazing emotional intelligence, but struggles to make friends her age because she is viewed by other children as younger than she is. Even though she's 9 and technically in fourth grade, her reading level is more similar to kindergarten, while her math skills are around third grade. She did about 7 years of speech therapy from age 2 to 9. We recently stopped because she plateaued, and we realized that the developmental delays that were becoming apparent weren't speech related. So, this is a great example of how complex children's learning issues can be. A lot going on there, a lot to unpack. And it probably is best to start with the concept of, or the aspect of this situation, which is this is a child who was receiving speech therapy for 7 years from age 2 to 9. So obviously there was some kind of speech issue, um, maybe articulation, maybe processing speech, maybe producing speech. We don't really know from this, but something to do with language and was developmentally not where they expected it to be. And so this child has had speech therapy for that. It is not uncommon at all for that or occupational therapy or other kinds of interventions and therapies to plateau at some point because there are other cognitive processes at play that need to be strengthened, that are weaknesses and that are barriers and that are stumbling blocks that are keeping this child from being successful. And they talk about developmental delays. So developmental delays can be delays in all kinds of different cognitive processes. And here it talks about auditory information. It talks about remembering what she's learned from day to day, and especially language-based information. So when we start to think about what this might look like, what kind of results we might get from an assessment, I would start at least to speculate that one issue might be working memory. So working memory is what lets you hold information in your mind while you think about it. And if that's limited or it's difficult for this child to hold information, especially information that she's heard in working memory, in order to process it and develop a response, that could certainly be something that's going on here. We don't know that, of course, but that's something that we might consider. We also might consider some issues with sort of more language development around vocabulary, meaning, the relationships among things. And there, other kinds of complex reasoning skills could also come into play, where it's difficult for her to remember, to connect the dots, to understand how things relate to each other. So things like figurative language. Often what we might hear with a child like this is that maybe she takes idiomatic expressions literally. Things like, oh, that was a piece of cake. Well, some kids are looking around for the cake when you say things like that. There's not any cake. It means that it was easy. A tempest in a teapot, a sunny disposition. Those kinds of figurative use of language are much harder for some people to process and understand and use than others. And that could be, if her language is less well developed, that could certainly be something that's going on. So there are a variety of things that could be happening here, and remembering things that she's learned from day to day. So one of the things that we do when we are working with children is we assess long-term memory. We want to understand whether it is how easy or how difficult it is for children to remember information that they see, so visual memory, or information that they hear or read. So information for language or memory for language-based information. And very often we see a discrepancy between those two. For some people, it's much easier to remember an image or a chart or a graph or something that they've seen, what someone was wearing, what a place looked like. And you'll find that they can describe it actually in great detail, whereas it's more difficult for them to remember something that they read or heard. Or the opposite can be true. Verbal information might be easier to remember. What we're seeing these days, following the pandemic, is a significant, really dramatic impact of that time on children's memory skills. And I don't think we know why, but what we're seeing is significantly lower scores on especially verbal memory, but both verbal memory and visual memory. So what we're seeing, and this child is 9, so would be exactly that right age. Kids in the younger kids, this has been much more of an impact than older kids, but it's true for everybody. It's actually even true for adults. So what we're seeing is this decrease in the ability to commit information to memory and then to retrieve it later. And obviously that's the essence of learning. So it's a significant issue. 2 things we got to think about here. One is that we can, if one of the skills, actually 3 things. One, if the one visual memory or verbal memory is stronger, we want to help the child understand how to use that to their advantage. If something is less effortful, then we want to help them use that skill and take advantage of the fact that it's stronger. So using images and visualizing, if you're stronger visual memory, describing things or writing a description of it if it's stronger verbal memory. If they're both weak, then we have some additional challenges. And what we're going to want to really focus on, if that is the case, is multisensory instruction or multimodal instruction, multisensory experiences, so that children get a chance to be exposed to and work with the information that we want them to be able to remember in multiple ways. Maybe they build a model and then talk about it. Maybe they draw a picture and then act it out. So we want to capture and have them utilize more than one sense so that they have a better chance. It makes it easier for our brains to then later retrieve that information. And then the final thing that we want to really keep in mind, if it's a memory problem or a working memory problem or any of the other things that we've talked about, is that we can actually build these skills. Intelligence is not fixed. Cognitive skills are not fixed. Wherever we start, we can improve them. And the right kind of cognitive training can do that. But until we understand what those skills are, until we understand how they operate, what the relationship is to academics and the other things in life, because these issues with social interactions, these issues with other types of behavior are not isolated, and they're not just behavior. They're very much connected to all of these other cognitive processes and their development. So there are absolutely ways to strengthen these skills. And what I'm going to do, we have a parent training session that goes into all of this in quite a bit more detail and talks about these skills and what they are. I'm going to post a link to that in the comments underneath the video when it appears. And it's a great way to learn about this and to start to get a handle on what might be going on with your complex child. So I will look forward to that. I look forward to talking to you another time and exchanging some conversation. And I'll be back soon.